In a time where jobs are scarce, the cost of living is rising, and many youths are struggling to find their footing, financial independence is no longer a luxury. It is a necessity. But the big question is, how do young people move from dependence to dominance? Today on Youth Connect, we are talking about building smart businesses. Not just any business, but businesses that solve real problems, use digital tools, require strategic thinking, and create sustainable income. From side hustle to full-time entrepreneurship, from social media monetization to value-driven enterprises, we are exploring practical steps that can turn ideas into income. Is it about capital or creativity? Is it about connections or consistency? How can young people avoid common business mistakes and build something that lasts? If you're a young person and tired of waiting for opportunities and ready to create your own, this conversation is for you. Welcome to Youth Connect, brought to you by Trust TV. I am Fatima Ahmed Musa. Now let's go on a quick break. I will return. You get to meet my guest. Welcome back, and thank you so much for staying with us. Now, joining me in the studio is Muhammed Awwal Abubakar. He's a seasoned energy policy advisor, strategist, and system artist with over 2 decades of cross-disciplinary expertise in energy and commercial sector worldwide, spanning Africa, Europe, the Middle East, and Asia. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you. I'm glad to be back on Youth Connect.
Yes, indeed. I mean, we had you on the morning show a couple of weeks ago, and now we're here still talking about something, that has been taking, the minds of youths, and somehow I'll say eating deep. That's, getting opportunities, to build something on their own. And we can see that Nigerian youths are actually struggling with that. What can you say about it?
Right. The first thing to remember is any form of financial independence is a symbolism of dignity. So regardless whether you're in Kenya, Nigeria, or in Geneva, the fact that you are able to be independent symbolizes some sense of dignity. Last time I was here, just by mentioning a water crisis in a community led to one of your viewers actually helping solve that problem. So as we speak, that community has water.
Nice.
Now, why is this instructive? Sometimes we argue capital, but it's also your integrity that can be capital. You don't need to have money in the bank. It could be your character that shapes where you're able to invest or add value. Now let's bring it back to this question about the youth and the challenges. Looking at two generations, the past generation and today's generation. The past generation were brought up on go to school, get good grades, get a job, retire. Today's generation, the youth are saying we want something that is ours, something we can own. They're not necessarily looking for jobs. The older generation also had certain incentives that allowed them see a linear path. Trajectory, it's not so much the case. So in order to create financial independence, we need to establish, first of all, what kind of environment we find ourselves in, its challenges and opportunities, and therefore find solutions that will lead us to some sort of prosperity. I'll give an example. Imagine a young lady who makes shea butter somewhere in Bidda. She comes, daily to produce this shea butter, good quality, but she's having to use a petrol-powered generator. By the time she does her numbers at the end of the month, she has spent over 40% of her bottom line fueling a generator. That's not a business problem. That is an economic oxygen issue. where the fuel for her business has been stifled and she can't survive.
So how can young people identify business opportunities within Nigeria's energy and infrastructure sector?
Let's broaden that question. At the macro level, few weeks ago, the Nigerian government reported $49 billion thereabouts in reserves. Think of it as some kind of macro weather forecast. And on the micro side, you have Nigerian youths whom we'll consider sheltered, but their concern is the reality around them does not reflect $49 billion. They need to create some kind of a roof that is resistant to whatever the weather elements are going to be. 2025, Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala came to visit the president with some good news, targeted at women in business that were going into export within the digital economy. 65,000 Nigerian women applied. 146 got through. Please, 65,000. 146 succeeded, and only 16 were scalable, meaning they were the only ones that managed to shine. So if I take someone like Nkiru somewhere in Onitsha, who has spent her time building her Gari business. She does excellent Gari, it's good quality, but she's never kept books. She doesn't necessarily keep any records. She's not privy to the systems and structures that would allow her access capital. What happened then is Nkiru would have easily found herself amongst those 65,000 women, not for lack of talent, but rather lack of preparedness. She's not been shown the reins to access it. So to answer the question, there are opportunities such as that. I think there's a GEEP funding out there as well, some that are government related, but I try to stay away from the state funding structures. GIYA is one of them as well. There's several out there. But when it comes to the bigger scope, this was a fund that was structured between the World Trade Organization and the International Trade Center. So these are the opportunities that youth can actually access. But the preparation process is something that hopefully as we go along, I'll be able to give one or two pointers.
Yeah, I mean, it's beautiful for you to have cited examples, you know, using some characters in your explanation, but a lot of youths are also complaining about, you know, lack of capital. So from your experience, is it really about, you know, capital? Is it the biggest barrier, or strategic thinking?
I wouldn't say capital just yet. And here's my why. So again, let's take someone in Port Harcourt, comes out to GRA, walks around Oddie Street, and on Oddie he sees these beautiful buildings and decides, you know what, I've got a phone in my pocket. Takes some nice photos, does what he can do either with AI or whatever. Next thing, he's put up photos on Instagram, he's reached out to the landlord, and those properties are getting referrals. Did this gentleman need any capital? No. At that point, he took initiative. His capital was the foresight to see an opportunity. And I made the example of that water project getting funding because sometimes when the right structure that people can trust is in place, the capital will follow it. If Nkiru was prepared with her Gari business, she would be maybe number 147 on that list of 146. She just didn't know the reins on how to access that capital. So it does matter, but it's not the main thing. It shouldn't be the major barrier that's stopping the youth. If you take an example of someone who sets up a barbing business, he rents one chair, starts cutting hair. 2 years down the line, he can bring in 2 more people. Now they're renting chairs within where he's cutting hair. Frees him up to make extra income. Collaborativeness also helps. at times. You could be having maybe someone that does puff-puff, small chops. She owns her pots, her pans, whatever it is that she uses to make the puff-puff. That's within her domain. It's what she has. She can start with it. When it comes to scaling, she can now decide to partner with at least 3 other women, and now they can buy flour in a larger quantity. Cuts down the cost for them individually, but still allows them to now package it and sell it maybe to office buildings and what have you. So sometimes it's more than a capital conversation.
Yeah. I mean, you've been outside the country, Europe, toured Africa, Middle East, and the rest. What can you say, or how can you compare, the zeal, the benefits, or the opportunity that other youths have in these countries that Nigerian youths don't have?
Well, to start with, I wouldn't necessarily agree that anyone has an edge over us. And here's my why, once again. Anywhere you find a dogged Nigerian youth in the world, they excel. At the risk of sounding very arrogant, no one has it as good as us when determined to get results. On both extremes, but I don't want to talk about the negative side. So that is well known. There's a lot of zeal and commitment. Of course, certain nuances you find in other environments would be support systems by way of grants, by way of loans, which is a good thing and sometimes a bad thing. If you're a Nigerian, you've not grown up taking bank loans and mortgages, you can actually depend on yourself too. It takes time, but you can actually build something sustainable. If you took those people in the more quote-unquote stabler environment, drop them in here, silence is what you're getting. I don't think you'll see. Survive. Not even Mark Zuckerberg, pun intended.
Yeah. What are the biggest mistakes that you see young entrepreneurs make these days when starting a business?
Biggest mistakes: putting our eggs in one basket. What do I mean? There was an editorial in one of the national dailies that reported Nigerian exporters are shifting towards China as opposed to the US, which has been their trade partner for a while. Sometimes when one door slams shut, build your own gate.
Yeah.
So the move towards China is signaling collaboration. We can't compete with them in terms of production, but we need to own certain things as well. We should come to the table with something of value. So whether it's skills, whether it's me taking from my local government, I take cashew nuts, I've roasted them, and I've also tried as much as possible to comply with the export standards. By so doing, I'm opening myself up to more opportunities. There is the AFCFTA, which is from the African continent intertrade area. The whole idea is free trade across the continents. So then Nigerian youth should be focused on providing solutions that can also resonate across 54 countries. So if you're solving a problem in Nigeria, your market is actually not just Lagos, Kano, Benue, or Kwara. You actually are solving a problem that is relatable to someone from Algiers and all the way to Dar es Salaam, because we do have that cultural context. And I bring it back to the China shift. You see, China has the scale and the ecosystem to compete. They cannot replicate our culture. They cannot replicate our identity. And I believe that's where our greatest strength lies for the youth.
Yeah. How important is policy awareness for young people or business owners, especially in regulated sectors like energy?
I beg your pardon?
How important is policy awareness for young people or business owners, especially in sectors like energy?
Okay. Very important. And I'll take us back to the statement about China. You're doing business with another country, you need to know the laws. And it's the same thing here. And I'm glad you asked that question, because we've over time become quite complacent to the point of saying, this one, na Niger standard. You know, so that in itself says I'm not prepared to compete globally. By the time you put yourself at the forefront, you're very aware of what it takes to trade with, you know, international parties or even locally, and you're committed to that. Your name is what's on the line, not anyone else. And which is why I said it's not about capital, it's about your character. Take, for instance, someone in Ladipo market that anyone can call for spare parts or whatever it is that he's selling. He has a warehouse. You call him, like, Emeka, he just says, no problem. Alaji, I'm sending it to you in Kano. The car has gone. Why? Because Emeka has built that reputation over time. Other people can cut corners, but in due time, he might have started slowly because he's trying to build reputation. But what happens is he starts to corner the business because his name is actually the ticket. And it's the same thing when you go to take a loan. If you go out to the banks, they're looking at your reputation, your credit history, right? Similarly with contracts, we've seen it. Why is this company the one that got the award, they bidded higher? Because they have reputation. There's a name that goes with it. So it is in the energy sector, it's highly regulated. There are different spaces for individuals to play. This is where the foundation of any economy begins because it's energy centric. Of course, I would advocate that as much as possible, find out what's going on within that space. But most importantly, do not build businesses that guzzle up fuel. Why am I saying this? Again, the lady I made an example of, making shea butter. If you know by design your business is already going to be taking so much energy by petrol or diesel, it's time to redesign it such that maybe solar is your alternative in that regard. So of course with this, you're having to be more open to learning about policies and what have you. I think it's also instructive at this point to say, look, for the Nigerian youth, you do not want to build any business that is going to eat up your entire profit by lunchtime. You started in the morning, by lunch your profit is gone. That's not a business, that's a donation center.
So we've seen a lot of youths, struggling with the economy to start business. Do you think you should focus on trading, service, or production if they want a long-term stability?
Long-term stability, absolutely production. Be production-centric. Again, back to what I said earlier. You want to own something of value. If you're taking raw cashew to China, you just sold, you're getting pennies. But if you roasted it, looked at the standards, complied with it, and sent it out there, you're making a little bit more extra than you would. So it's really about production, adding value. Look at areas for processing, for instance, whether it's dry grains. Look at areas, in fact, even intellectual property. So imagine, let's say, what state do I take? Let me take a state like Cross River. A young man is there in Cross River. He's figured out that, look, there's a demand for, there's a market demand for milk locally. And then he decides to look online. He finds a gentleman in Gwele, Kano, that does this. He has a lot of cows. The guy in Cross River decides to build a tech app that connects market. He doesn't own a cow. He does not own a milk factory to process. What he has done is intellectually build something that coordinates our markets. So sometimes it's not just about physical products, it's also intellectual product, it's the digitized products that you can put out there, which can be exported. Because if it does work here, why then shouldn't it work in Dodoma, South Sudan, or and what have you?
How important is carrying out research, data research, or even or before starting a business rather? How important is data research?
Data research, the market has shifted. It's a lot easier. I would speak more for execution over research. That would be my prime. That would be my prime focus. Why? Because you learn as you go on the fly. Acting is also part of getting intel, right? So when you go out there and do things, I'm not for youth sitting down to do hours and hours of research. If you want to research, focus primarily on certain things. What value am I creating? Who is my customer? How do I get to this customer? How do I distribute my products to them? What are the key resources that I need? What are the key activities that are involved in this business? Who do I need to partner with? What will it cost me? How much am I making? End of.
Yeah. I mean, you just broke it down. I'm sure a lot of youths watching now will learn one or two things, but many youths also want to make quick money. How do you think we can convince them to think long term instead of just going for quick money all the time?
I wouldn't even risk advising or encouraging anyone to think long term. Experience is the best teacher. There are absolutely no shortcuts. So it's one of two things. You either start with a group and you see them excelling 5-10 years down the line, and you now realize why you didn't take those initial right steps to be patient and grow organically. Organic growth, organic growth, organic growth. It has never gone wrong. It matters how you structure your business. If you're very resilient and you know where you're applying your energy, like I said, you've designed it not to push your overheads very high. And at the same time, you are now trying as much as possible to use cost-saving methods that will make impact on your bottom line. So it's not really much about convincing them not to be ambitious and want quick money. It comes really fast, but as fast as it comes, it goes out as well. Out the door it goes.
Yeah. How important is mentorship when a person wants to go into a smart business strategies?
Mentorship is very important. I'm a beneficiary of it. I have been mentored by 3 fantastic individuals in this country, and I've seen firsthand what it can do for you. It gets you into rooms, you get to listen, you get to observe, you get to be thrown into the deep end and essentially find your way over time. So I will definitely advocate for that as much as possible. Get the mentorship, whether you can do it remotely, whether it's someone that's physically around you, can't go wrong with it, but also give yourself room to grow. So if you took it whereby you're being supervised, after a point you'll need to start executing without supervision of a mentor.
Yeah. So how can young people build credibility when they are just starting out, especially with new businesses?
So credibility at the beginning of a new business, think of it as your infrastructure. This is the gold standard of your business. I could mention several brand names here, not that I will, but imagine every brand, whether it's a car, there's one that you'd rather have if money wasn't an issue. Whether it's a technology gadget, there's one that you would rather have. Whatever it is, those things have been built over time based on names. China, once upon a time, was associated with China made. It seemed it wasn't great. Now every one of us, because they're focused on what? Efficiency, getting it right, product reputation has become globally known. China itself is a marketable brand. So it's very, very instructive when you start. You want to honor your promises when you commit to someone. People aren't getting excuses. When you want to be at a position where when you disappoint them, they actually understand without you making up excuses. But it needs you to commit. When you say your yes, it's your yes. And always be prepared to say no. That helps build your character.
Yeah. Someone once told me, learn to say no sometimes, you know. But how can young people, this is because you earlier mentioned, because of the program you joined last time, there was a change in a community where there's no water. So how can young people build businesses that solves real problems or infrastructure problems in their communities?
It's quite an ask. I tend to use a framework that uses a few testable hypotheses. So for instance, I would start by looking at whether or not the problem is unavoidable. I would look at whether or not the problem is urgent. I would look at whether or not the business is disruptive. I would look at also, is it something that is blatant that everyone else can see? Is it something that is critical? Once you have a problem that is critical and blatant, then you're now looking for some kind of white space. For those that play sports, whether it's basketball or football, those tiny spaces that you can shoot the ball across and it gets to who you want to get. So that's the sort of thinking. You're now looking, but you're asking the right question. Is this problem blatant? Everyone sees it. Is it critical? Then you look at the hows in terms of the mechanics of doing it. And then look at the pain-gain ratio. Whoever is suffering this problem, what is the level of pain they're feeling from it? What kind of gain will you expect them to have by the time you resolve it? So it requires, you can just be a layman, approach it from a layman's perspective, like, oh boy, these people, they don't have this here, I'm going to bring it. Or you can go the scientific route, be tactical and say, look, if it's unavoidable, if it's something that is urgent and important, if it's something that is blatant and critical, if it's something that is discontinuous, how do I build a solution around that? So that's the kind of conversation. There's a gentleman by the name of Michael Scott. Anyone listening out there, Michael Scott has this very beautiful framework that he put up in his Harvard Business School labs. You can look it up online, and I'm sure this framework will resonate and really help a lot of people with problem-solving approach when they want to build business.
Yeah. That's actually beautiful. But what policy reforms would you like to see that can make youth entrepreneurship easier in Nigeria? Because we know that it's actually a bit difficult.
What policy reform would I like to see? Quite simply put, I want to see the youth turning away from job seeking. It's not real. It died with the past generation. It's not going to happen anytime soon. So it means that policy can only happen when the youth are on the table. They need to demand a seat on the table and be part of the framework being developed, not relying on someone else building it and serving it to them on a platter. Like I said, you don't want to be in a position where you've built a business, you went to work in the morning, your profit has gone because of the generator by lunchtime. All you did, my brother, my sister, you built a donation center, not a business.
I mean, you said it all. Thank you so much for being part of the program, Muhammed Awwal Abubakar. Thank you for being here with us.
Thank you for having me. Pleasure to be on Youth Connect once again.
Thank you so much.
Right.
As we close today's conversation, one message is clear. Financial independence is possible, but it requires smart thinking, strategy, and courage. Youth must move from just hustling to building a system that can create sustainable value. Start where you are. Use what you have. Think long term. This has been Youth Connect. I am Fatima Ahmed Musa. In case you missed any of our episodes, do join us on our social media platforms showing on your screen, and then for more programs and news. Stay blessed.